Hello. Welcome to the Friends of Zeus podcast. I'm Zeus. To the left on my screen, if you raise your hand, is Michael. We sometimes call him Brandon. And down below is Mr. Mitch from the podcast Life's a Mitch. First of all, I love the name. It's so perfect. If you were Bruce, what would you have done? But anyway, it wouldn't be Life's a Bruce. Anyway, his website is Life's a Mitch Podcast at is it Gmail?
My actual website is lifesamitchpodcast.com.
Lifesamitchpodcast.com.
And that's the same on all the socials, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Insta. I'm there. So
you're everywhere, man. So look for us on Friends of Zeus podcast. Look on YouTube, Facebook. We're building our presence on Spotify, and as I said before, there's rumblings on Rumble. And I'm just gonna I'm kind of trying to get it out to all these different platforms. It's a time-consuming process, but we're working on it.
Took me a while. Take your time.
Exactly. It's hard to do. You need a producer. You really do. And none of us can afford it right now. But also look for us on the Life's Mitch podcast, because we'll be doing one with him at some point soon.
And I'll include all the links to the bios and stuff. But yeah, talking about like getting started, I'm self-taught, and if I can do it, like everything on YouTube, you'll find your way, fellas.
Yeah, you know, I'm one of those guys that every time I make an accomplishment, I'm like, holy cow, how did I do that? But this is the one thing that even if we don't get famous, I just love doing it. I don't know how you are about it. I mean, I want it to be a business. You know how they say, find something you love to do and you'll never work another day in your life. That's this. If I could do this day in and day out, it would be just amazing for me. And we're doing it once a week. It's for me, it's cathartic. I think Mike would probably agree with that. Like,
definitely, yeah.
You can hang with some people that you can talk to. We have a really interesting dynamic where we're all from kind of different political stances, but we maintain a polite discourse, which is the soul of what I want with this show. That and getting rid of all this tribalism. You know, if you don't like what I like, then you're bad. I'm done with that. I'm too old to find ways to be angry. I'd rather find ways to be happy. You know what I mean?
Anybody got time for that?
No one has time for that.
Not at all, man. So anyway, I was looking for people to come on the show, and I ran across Mitch on a website, and I guess we hit it off. There's something that piqued each other's interest, and I was like, I gotta have you on the show. And then I listened to your show, man, and dude, you're crushing it. I like what we're doing, but I like what you're doing a lot. Like you have a really great way of getting people to talk to you. And we've been working on that lately too. We've been getting more guests, you being one of them. And we're noticing a little bit of a bump, which is good. We want to get more subscribers, but it's more just to be good at this so we can do this and have it kind of be self-sustaining. I'm still going to do it, but we could use some production.
Well, firstly, thank you for all that. And at the end of the day, I mean, yes, it's nice to have subscribers and getting feedback to who you're entertaining, all that stuff. But if you're not doing it for you, then what's the point? If you're doing it just for the likes, then it seems disingenuous. And from that point, people are going to look through and go, oh, they're focusing on the wrong areas. If you're doing it for you, I do it for me. Like, I just enjoy talking to people and having fun. And that's where it all starts. I mean, it's creative. It's an outlet. And it keeps me semi-sane, coming out of a pandemic-ish, still got a bit going on, but, this kept me sane through it. So if you can, I say it all the time on my show, if you got that desire to want to do something, buy that house, go on that trip now, or create that art. Because as the listener, you are the only person who spends 24 hours a day with you. And if you take your ideas to the graveyard, humanity can't benefit from it. So do what you can, live a life, create that content, because at the end of the day, I know it sounds morbid, you are the one who has to deal with your actions. So that's why I do it, because I enjoy it,
Yeah. I mean, get out of my head, because this is for me, it's about putting back out there. I have a job where I get to, and I'm not going to say what it is, but where I get to really give back. I'm one of the lucky people that loves what I do, and I get to really, really give back, next level. I can't enjoy my job more. But I would give it up for a second for this, just finding kind people that have, and that's one thing I wanted to say about your show. I was talking to Jack, who'll be coming on later. You emanate this kindness with your guests that I really enjoy. I listened to the one with the escort, which she's fascinating. I'd love to get her on the show. She's really cool.
She's the first guest I had from out. I just moved out to this region, so fellow content creator, and she used to be a doctor, and now she's an escort. So she used to treat the sick, and now she rides the dick, as she puts it.
So you said you're in a new area. You said on that podcast that you're 5 hours more west than you were previously?
Yeah, so I used to live in a place called Newcastle, which is or Kurri, which is in the coastal region of the Hunter Valley, famous for wineries and stuff. And I moved out west out here because my dad's family's from here, and I got a good career opportunity that I couldn't pass up. So I'm a miner by trade. I was in coal mining for 5 years. And before that, building roads and civil jobs. And I just got a job out here in the gold mine. So
I think that's fascinating, by the way.
Trying something new, yeah.
Gold mining. To go back to another Australian movie, one of a really great Australian, it's not an Australian movie, I don't think, but I loved it, was, have you ever seen Quigley Down Under?
Can't say I have.
Tom Selleck.
Such a great movie.
It's a Western. It's kind
That
of like
man's mustache alone should be worth the price of admission.
It's kind of like a Western, really.
I'd say it's a top-notch movie. There's nothing that's not good about it.
No, it's a very good movie.
And I bet not a frame of it was filmed in Australia.
Probably not. It's probably shot in New Jersey or something.
Yeah.
But it is. He's like a long range rifleman. He's like the equivalent of a sniper, but it's like the early 1800s or something like that, right?
And maybe one of the best punchlines in a movie, which I will not give away because you, Mitch, should go see it. Jack was reinforcing to me what I would like to do first before we get into Australia and how it is for you there. Can you kind of tell us your story? I mean, I know it, but for our listeners, how you got into this, what inspired you to put this part of this amount of time out of your life into putting it out there?
Okay, my story. Well, for starters, I was born with a head for radio, so I had the prerequisites. Number two, I just like entertaining people. The person who loves the sound of Mitch's voice the most is definitely Mitch.
Of course.
And three, I'm good at it. I've always enjoyed talking to people, and I've got a natural affinity for just sitting back and having a chat. And so how I got started was I actually went on an Australian game show called Mastermind, and there was a viral video of me. They put a promotional video out of the episode where I wore a Scrubs onesie. Now, for those of you who like the show Scrubs, there's a Scrubs podcast called Fake Doctors, Real Friends.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I was wearing their onesie on national television. This thing went viral, got across all the socials, about 1 million views.
Wow.
And I actually got to speak to Turk and JD, or Donald Faison and Zach Braff, and on their show, Fake Doctors, Real Friends. I remember
reading about that, yeah.
And then I went semi-viral. My podcast went to number 1 on the leisure category in Australia on Spotify and Apple, and in the top 30 and 20 in the US and UK. And turns out that people just are eager to speak to me. I've spoken to musicians, comedians, some of those behind the scenes in Hollywood, like Kip Krauger. He's a Emmy Award winner from Ted Lasso. Spoke to Carrie Bennett. She was a costume designer on The Office, Scrubs, and she's got a credit on Ace Ventura too. And it's easy. You talk to people about their stories, And
people love to talk about themselves. It's a lot of easier.
a lot of people don't get a chance to share their stories. I love saying her name. Her name's Barke Faraj Kumus, and she's from Zanzibar, and she was forced into an arranged marriage and moved to England with her husband.
Listen to some of that, yeah.
Yeah, she was treated like garbage for over a decade, had children to him, and now she's transcended beyond her means, and she's a motivational speaker in the Muslim community in over 100 countries. It's stories like that should be brought to light. I think that's why I do it. I just share stories, and everyone's been super kind. I started with my family, and then it's changed over time. At first, I was going to focus on relationships, but I figured I got no skin in that game.
Open it up. Yeah.
It's just like talking to a guy at the pub having a beer or a coffee at a coffee shop.
Yeah, listen to the one with you and your brother, and that's so cool. You got such an interesting, like, familial, like, I've got no directly connected brothers or sisters either. And if I remember correctly, because bear in mind, with my job, I work 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. So I'm listening to you, but part of it's half asleep. So
I know the feeling, bro. I used to do 7 p.m. to a.m. and a.m. to p.m. regularly operating dozers and haul trucks and stuff. So I feel your pain.
But well, I love it. I mean, and they pay you better for it anyway. So, and it's usually quieter in general. But I remember that story, and you talking with your brother, and you're like me. Like I have a sister that's in California. I never knew about her until I was like 23, and we stopped talking for a little while. No harshness or anything, but you got my life is more important because it's my life kind of attitude, and you forget about them. And we've recently kind of reconnected a bit. I got a half sister in Florida. I got a baby sister and a step brother that I haven't talked to in like 20 years because whatever. They want to reach out. I've said it a million times. Reach out to me. I'm here. I'll be.
I learn something every week. I didn't know that. I didn't know you have a stepbrother.
Yeah, he's actually quite famous. He was the supercuts. He's the guy that invented supercuts. Well, I mean, whatever. Not the haircut place, but like these supercuts where you show like every Mel Gibson bit. That was for you. Or every, since you said it, every like Scrubs, what's his name? Dr. Cox moment, oh, here's Jack. But so yeah, he also helped start U2 and Kickstarter. Like he's a really well-known guy in the internet world. I won't give his name out because I think he hates me, but whatever. Well,
a good interviewer, I always like, are you familiar with Dick Cavett? Mitch?
Love him.
No. He's probably like back during the 70s here in the US, he had a show, the Dick Cavett Show, and he's a very unassuming, quiet guy. Like you would never, like if he was in a room at a party, like you wouldn't even notice him, but he has this like very generous demeanor, and he has this knack for asking people, he asking interesting people questions that they haven't been asked before. Because a lot of times, and this was back, again, during the 70s before you had like the culture we have now, but people would go on these shows and they would be asked the same questions again and again and again, and he would just be like, what's your favorite childhood memory, or like, did you ever have a tree house, or like he would just go off in these directions. He's just an amazing interviewer, and it is a gift. And I do, again, I listened to about 4 of your podcasts in the last few days, and just the art of having like a long form interview show where there's not like a limit, no one's watching the clock, you can kind of just let the conversation take its course. I think we need more of that to kind of counter a lot in our culture where everything has to be like get to the point, right? Like really fast. So it's refreshing. It really is. It's just refreshing. It was very nice. I was listening to it in the car while I was going around to work this week.
Mitch, this is Jack. Have you seen X-Files?
I've seen. G'day, Jack. How you doing?
Hey, Mitch. Nice to meet you, man. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Oh, pretty good, thanks.
So Jack's up in New Jersey, right across the river from New York.
Yeah,
geographically.
Garden State represent, eh?
that's it, man. That's it. Good for you. We're all over the world.
So Mitch, yeah. So I mean, you actually, I think it was you that actually brought up the Port Arthur, because I was saying that I wanted to know what it was like in Australia now, and I think it was you that mentioned that like things really changed around the Port Arthur shootings, which I read about. And I honestly, I'll be honest, I didn't know anything about it, and I'm actually a huge I love the true crime, cults, serial killers, shootings. I don't love that they happen, but it's something that I I want to learn about it because of the nature of what I do. I'm always looking at the psychological aspects of things. Nice try, Jack, but I'm not going to say it.
We'll get there before the end of the episode. But
you guys can see it.
Yeah.
But I did find it fascinating. This guy was a freaking monster. It sounds like he just walked from house to house and just annihilated.
Well, it's a shock. It's horrible. It's a nightmare.
Okay, I'll give you a rundown as to a brief history of Port Arthur. So, in the earliest days of Australian white settlement, sort of circa late 1700s, early 1800s, what is now known as the state of Tasmania, which is, if you're looking at the map, it's the little island to the south of Australia, southeastern part of Australia, and it was originally called Van Diemen's Land, Diemen. That was the name of one of their governors at the time.
Yeah.
And Port Arthur was
the U2 song.
Is that the U2 song that Edge sings?
I don't know, probably.
Rattle and Hum. Yeah, Van Diemen's Land. Okay.
I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit about U2.
Nice.
All right, sorry.
Nah, man,
sorry.
I don't give a shit, to be honest.
It's just the second time I've ever heard that. So
all good. So Van Diemen's Land. Now the actual prison of Port Arthur itself is quite large, and the unique topography of it was built in such a location where you couldn't escape on foot or by sea, because there was a large archipelago that was patrolled regularly, as well as obviously people on land. So if you got there, you were pretty much, you had nowhere to go. And Port Arthur is known as one of the most haunted places in Australia. There is a place called the Unnamed Island where there are literal hundreds, if not thousands of skeletal remains of children with unnamed graves on them. They used to have something called the silent prison, where eventually the inmates were almost immune to their tortures. So they built a silent prison, and for 23 hours a day that the inmates were in pitch black darkness. And I spent 10 minutes in one of these cells, and I was ready to get out. I was scared, and the guards used to walk above them in socks so they couldn't hear a thing, and they're allowed out once a day for activities. So this place,
it sounds like torture.
Torture, yeah.
A lot of the ex-inmates, once they had did their time, couldn't conform back to society, so they would go back and volunteer there on a basis. So it's an evil history. You fast forward to the 1990s. Now, gun control laws in Australia have never been as it's not as accessible as the US, because we don't have in our constitution a right to bear arms as it's written in yours. So, you've gone through a series of more of a rigmarole to get your gun license, etc. Now, it was in, I believe it was 1995, a gentleman. So Port Arthur it's huge. So it's got a garden, the jails, the old jail, and it's huge. Anyways, 25 or 26 people were gunned down. And to this day, no one knows why, but this guy had access to firearms, and John Howard was our prime minister at the time, and him and his government have gone, you know what, fuck this, we're making gun laws, we're going to make it harder and more of a rigmarole to get your gun license. And ever since then, it seemingly worked. There's less killings, there's less accidents, and it breaks my heart. You hear a story come out, possibly the US, and a toddler's got access to a firearm and he's killed himself. It's sad. And I'm not here to say one constitution is better than the other, because it's not. Our countries work differently, and your beliefs are different to mine. But I'm glad it went this way. because you don't want the wrong people with firearms, and as a result, it seemingly worked for us. So that's a little history of Port Arthur.
Well, and I'll agree with you to a point. And our Constitution was based in that you need to have firearms to rise up against a corrupt government. However, we're not doing it, so maybe why do we need the firearms? I personally lately, the way things are going here, wanted to buy a firearm, not because I have any intent to use it, but if you're going to come for me and my kids, I'm going to take every one of you down that I can. These guys know me. You don't know me from anyone, Mitch, but I'm like Captain Nonviolent. I'm like, let's find a peaceful way to do this.
Me too, man. So let's look at some of the facts between Australia and the US. Australia has 28 million people as opposed to what, 350 million US citizens?
330. Yeah.
330. Okay. You're looking at, a massive change in population. You've got, obviously statistics will show that violence will be higher because you've got a larger population. We're more scattered. Like most of Australians live on the coastlines because of the water supply and all that stuff. And whereas across the US, you're more densely populated. So just that alone, two examples of how different our nations are. And that's what I love about talking to people from different parts of the planet. You can break this stuff down. You can have a chat about it with active listening, and it makes for awesome storytelling. I
love you used active listening. That's exactly what it is. You gotta be engaged in the conversation. Otherwise, it's stagnation. You form algae. You know what I mean? I was thinking about that as I was processing the thought about it, and I was kind of thinking about the fact that Australia is a much smaller country than any other country in the world. Well, maybe not any, but but point being is
population-wise,
far more manageable. And I don't mean that the people can be managed. I mean that you can paint with broader strokes with your laws, and it's honestly, because it's a smaller population, I think that people probably lean easier to one way or the other, just because you kind of are that interesting island nation that doesn't have a negative effect on the world for the most part, until recently, when you start hearing words like New World Order in reference to.
See, those articles are preposterous. Australia we don't have POW camps. We don't have a New World Order. I don't understand.
She was a dummy. She was a dummy for saying that. Yeah.
Okay. So you're talking about political stances and politics. So some of the differences between Australian politics and the US are: one, it's mandatory to vote here every state and federal election and local election.
That's awesome.
Two,
you said it's mandatory.
You have to vote, otherwise you get fined. Yep.
Wow.
Two, it's based off the British political setup. So our parties are Liberals and Labor. They're Labor is your left wing and Liberals are your right wing, say. So you've got that going on. And also in the last 10 to 15 years, we've had prime ministerial backstabbing. So we've actually had more prime ministers than their terms should have allowed. So for example, in one term, Kevin Rudd won the election for Labor in 2007 and was backstabbed by Julia Gillard. So that happened. And then once the Liberals got back in power a few years later, there was Tony Abbott, then Malcolm Fraser, Tony Abbott again, I think. And then now it's Scott Morrison. So you've got, just this, you kind of look at it and go, this is a joke. Who's our leader? And, we elect someone to be in, and there's no guarantee that person will be there at the end of their first term.
Is it like the UK, where you can have a vote of no confidence? It's like a parliamentarian system, where you have a prime minister who is elected, but can basically, they have to form a government, and they can be overtaken before the next election. Basically, I don't know, but I think that's
sometimes you can have So the Liberals are in power at the moment federally, and they needed a few independent senators to join there. So you got a few national senators in there as well to make up a majority rules government. So you have to have X amount of seats to come into power. So they make deals with independent senators and stuff, and so basically, if not enough seats are voted, then you have to vote again until you find one.
And you don't necessarily have to have a majority. You just have to have.
You have to have a majority, but you also may need to ally yourself with
other parties. Well. Yeah, the
So yeah.
One question, and again, if I don't mean to go into politics, it's kind of boring, but it's just while we're talking about it, one thing that I found kind of interesting over the last few years is this seemingly contentious relationship between China and Australia. Is that? Can you speak to that? Like, I just never even. It's just something I've heard about, but
without throwing shade on the Chinese government, because I don't know the whole story. Yes, feuds have seemed to have escalated for a few reasons. One, like Australia was putting tariffs on trade routes with China. Like Australia is known for being a massive exporter of black and brown coal, and China refused to take a lot of like exports of coal. So there was that. They then went to South Africa, saying to be their big importer. It's just stuff like that. So there's been like trade disputes. There's been political disputes. There's been arguing, say. So a lot of it, China was for a long time that was buying a lot of Australian assets. For example, the capital of the Northern Territory, Darwin, the Chinese government has a 99-year lease on using the port there. So Australians got fed up with allowing foreigners, governments, and privatization as well of Australian assets. We just gone, enough's enough. So I think ultimately, I don't think the Chinese government was a fan of that. And that has, in part, escalated and caused some of the escalations to today. Yeah. Now, that's a very generic view of it. And I'm not by no means politically minded, but that's the way the media has portrayed it. There's tension there between the Australian and Chinese governments. Furthermore, I can't speak of it because I don't know.
I think
that's how it seems.
It's just one of those things that I never knew about, and then like 2 years ago, I started hearing about it. It's like, wow, I never realized that Australia and China would have any beef,
with the. Who doesn't like Australia?
I don't know.
Right?
There is a large Chinese Australian population, and it's quite a large community. And I don't know. I just think I'd like to go back to peaceful ways. Like I'd hope they de-escalate it, because no one wants to have enemies. No one wants to have arguments' sake. And
absolutely.
So I just think it's find a way back to peace, and that'd be great.
Man, I'm gonna retort, and obviously I don't want enemies and I want peace, but I think there's a lot of people that top 20% that's milking the other 80% that totally wants people to have enemies. And are you familiar with the Wizard of Oz? I mention this a lot, but there is a great deal of pay no attention to the man behind the curtain that goes on. I mean, like, for instance, right now, we're looking at the Ukraine. Is anybody looking at what's going on up in the North Pole, where they're trying to drag all the oil, and the US, the Russians and the Chinese and the Americans have been fighting, just standoff constantly? We're not even talking about it. Are we talking about Taiwan and China right now? No, we're looking at the Ukraine. There's so much. I don't want, obviously, disinformation, but there's also this. Don't look here. We want you to look here.
It all becomes clickbait journalism. There's seemingly the integrity of journalism internationally is all about what we want you to read up on. You might find a small article about the conflict in the North Pole in a small independent paper or something like that. But these days, it's all about clickbait. It's all about revenue. It's all about getting that algorithm right, And
the odd thing is we're against that. I think you are. I'll speak for you on this one, Mitch. We're against that whole dopamine rush kind of thing that's going on. But we, doing our shows, we want to get more clicks. We want to get more subscribers but for us, I think it's from a more altruistic point of view. We want to just talk to people. You know what I mean? Like get some pragmatic thought processes out there. And pragmatism is gone to the wayside. Nobody just sits and says, yeah, this is fucked up, but this is fucked up too. And let's find a way to meet in the middle and not fight constantly. I don't know how it is for you. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'll give you one example. Like today, we look at today being March 8th, it's International Women's Day. So to all the women out there, I hope you all have a great day and, and you get through the day and you achieve something that you want to achieve today. But like, I was just doing training at the local radio station because I'll be on the air there soon. And I had an on-air discussion with the presenter, and we spoke briefly about, like, say, women in mining. And for the most part, it's a boys' club. It's a male-dominated industry, et cetera, et cetera. And, like, a lot of people have, over time, have forgotten that the term feminist means equality, not to hate on men. So just speaking before about like the conflict here and all that stuff, if people just sit down and have active listening and don't just go, like, don't offer an opinion, offer facts. The same for journalism. If we can just provide facts as to what it is, maybe give you an opinion, but not in a way it's going to cast shade at someone, because people that throw shade at other people, I'll just turn off. I don't give a shit. But like,
exactly,
you give me integral journalism that's going to stand up and make me want to read, then I'll read that article or hear that story 100 times. But that's what I think is wrong with the world. It's, if we sit down, 2 people with active listening can achieve more than 100 people arguing like a group of fuckwits. So like, I just think that's what the world sorely seems to be missing right now, and it's a real shame. Because you would think of a global pandemic, countries would have pulled their resources together. But no, it's just doesn't seem like that's the case. So it's a real shame.
Well, it's a lot of times in our media, the spotlight is put on the.
Now, are you talking American media, Mike? Or are you
everywhere. A lot of the emphasis is put on how, like, the differences, and people. I start a lot of conversations. I mean, I have a lot of friends that view things a lot differently than me, and I found over the years that I like to have conversations about, like, what do we agree on? Like, what do we want that's the same, right? We all want our children to, grow up in a world that they don't have fear, right? They have a good education. They have great opportunity. They do better than us. I mean, I guess my point is, no matter where people are on the political spectrum, and I'm an optimist, I guess, which is kind of, if you've watched our podcast, you may not believe that, but I am. But I think people, I think for the most part, people have a lot more in common than they have differences. And I think our media kind of focuses a lot on the differences and overemphasizes it, and again, we
are all alike because we have limited time, we have blood, we all die.
Mm-hmm.
No matter your background, your ethnicity, or whatever, we're all here for a certain amount of time, so why not be a decent human? Say hello to someone, be kind, open the door for someone, all that shit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So a lot for me lately, and I've been and I try and I've said it on the show before. You haven't heard it, Mitch, because you haven't subscribed or clicked or liked. You son of a bitch.
Come down here and say it, hero.
Get on a plane.
But what I like to point out that when I walk down the street, and I am the epitome. Look at this. I am the epitome of white supremacist, as far as if you look at me.
Both of you.
Wow.
And my thing is when I walk down the street and I see somebody, I do the nod. You know what I mean? I don't, but my government and the media tells me BLM and woke and what's the other one? Me Too. And I don't have time for that. That's like, why would I bring drama into my life? No, I'm kind to people. In the last like 2 weeks, I've had like, there was a woman whose car wouldn't start from wherever. And I just, let me see if I can help you. And then today, I was taking my kid to school, and this lady's like, I remember seeing you from somewhere. Can you check out my car? Obviously, 2 car incidents. I guess I look like a mechanic.
Oh, it's just decency, man. It's just common decency.
But that's my point, is that if you look at the media, they're saying that I'm going fucking hardcore against this because one was a Muslim lady. Like, no, I'm not. Nobody is. I don't see anybody in my daily life that does these things.
How often do you see people just make assumptions based on their own knowledge, but in reality, they're terribly misinformed? So, for example, you're walking down the street, you see a guy with beards and tattoos, you like, oh, he must be a part of a bikie gang or something. It's like, but in actual fact, he's probably a social worker with the biggest heart of gold.
Mhm.
I think that people just need to use their own like judgment and not obviously not so much believe what the media says, but make your own minds up. Like if you want to do something, then do it. Be kind and just do your own thing. Like walk your own walk. And so whatever if the media says to me, Mitch, hate all Americans, I'll be like, fuck you, media. Some are okay. Michael and Jack are awesome, and you get on with your day.
Hey, what about me?
I don't know about Zeus. There's this one guy, Zeus. He's a cock. Yeah, he's a fucking asshole. But
You are not a friend of Zeus.
I'll tell you, this was years ago. I had
Sorry, man.
like I had this this kind of like moment of clarity. This was like years ago.
Into the wall.
No, I just
It looks like you're reaching into the wall and pulling out beers out of the wall. I'm like,
what is closed the window?
Greatest wall ever.
So no, I had this like traumatic event. This was like years ago, like over a decade ago. And like no, it was before that. And I would be driving, and there were like times where I was like going to work, and I would get so upset, like I couldn't even make it all the way to work. I would just have to like pull over and turn around and go home, because I was like so upset. And it awakened me where I would look around at other people on the expressway, and I was like, man, like there's hundreds, thousands of cars out here I'm driving by every day. And there's all these people that are going through whatever they're going through today. Like their parents just died, or their, relative just got a horrible diagnosis, or whatever. I mean, whatever it is, lost their job. It doesn't have to be like cataclysmic, but we're all like driving around on the road, and we have this assumption that everyone is just going to work or just doing their thing. But there's people around us, like near us, I mean literally near us, that are dealing with heavy shit like all the time, right? And they don't show it,
and they gotta go to work, and they gotta
go to work, and they gotta do stuff. And it's just like just having compassion and like having an openness to treat the people around you with kindness, right? It's hard. It can be hard, man. It's easy. It's like the whole thing where it takes like more muscles to smile, more face muscles to smile than it does to frown. Yeah. It's hard to be positive, man. It's a challenge. It is. It is hard.
Mitch was playing off your heartfelt.
It hurts to do that, man.
Yeah, it hurts to do that. But anyway,
heavy lifting.
Yeah, I'm just saying there's people around us all the time that are dealing with stuff that's like super intense, man. And it's important to keep that in mind and give people space. I mean, and Mitch, this was something, we were talking about this thing on a thread earlier that you weren't a part of, but this woman that was kind of being an ass. But like, even with her, like, you never know what people are dealing with. You never know. And
Have you
it's
ever-
not like you have to give every. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
last thing, it's not like you have to give everyone a pass. I'm not talking about like happy, crappy, like everyone just has to, like, you just have to like put up with everyone's bullshit. But it is important to measure your response.
He's waving off his
To
roommates.
people.
That's my roommate, Zach.
Hey, Zach, what's up, man?
Hey,
How's it going?
Just a bunch of
Crikey,
crazy
what's
US
he doing
guys
there?
Yeah, we're just,
doing the gross. Do you want a hand with them? Or you want a hand? You all right?
No.
Okay, cool.
yeah,
We
no.
just did it. Good to do the
I don't want to
shopping.
hang with these people, man.
What's this guy? How professional are you, Mitch? Come
Yeah,
on.
come on, man.
I'm as
Listen,
bad as
guy-
professional as you, Zeus. I got a can-do attitude and a pocket full of dreams, eh?
I'm sorry.
Come on, be better.
Hey, peace, man. Oh,
But
no,
like,
that
Michael,
doesn't
just
mean peace.
Going back to what you were saying, have you ever heard of the iceberg theory? I'm not talking about the Titanic right now.
Are you talking about where like 80% of it is below the water?
Yeah, so you see what's on the surface and that's it.
Yeah.
You might see someone well, now Australians say this word. Can I curse?
Yeah.
A little bit?
Of course.
So
Fuck
you might
yeah.
come across someone who's in a cunt of a mood, right?
Right.
And you can only see, like, they might be shitty. You don't know if they've buried someone. You don't know if they've just buried a loved one or had a fight with a spouse. You don't know.
Right.
So why the fuck would you not actively be kind to someone if you can? Obviously, if they're aggressive, aggression means aggression, of course.
Right.
But for the most part, that's the way I try to be every day. Like, just be
Yeah.
kind.
No, Mitch, that's
And you
totally
get more in
right.
return. You get more in return out of people as well.
Yeah, see, that's the problem though. Is it's like they say it's a jungle out there because like both you guys were saying, you don't know what's in somebody else's head or what kind of day that they're having, right? So you always got to give somebody the benefit of the doubt. But some people have had like a life where
That's right.
I don't know when it happened, if it was childhood or whatever, but there are just a lot of dicks out there that don't think about compassion and don't think about the other guy or being in their shoes. Like they just walk around in total dick mode, and we have to deal with that. And you don't know when it's coming if you don't know the person. And that kind of goes back to the whole gun issue too. And like Zeus was alluding to, like, what if somebody tries to hurt my kids? The problem is the guns are out there and a lot of people have them and not all of them is good. Like there are bad people out there. In fact, even the Port Arthur shooting, I was looking at it, just doing a quick internet search, and his firearm was not legally procured. Like it was an illegal handgun or a rifle or whatever he was using. He didn't get them by registering and doing all the right things, right? So you kind of have to measure your compassion, give people the benefit of the doubt with the fact that the guy driving next to you, Mike, who pulls over in the same parking lot as you, could just be a fucking maniac.
An ass. Yeah. Or yeah, some crazy person.
Yeah. And in that situation, I'd rather be packing.
But
Yeah,
the
fair
thing,
enough. Fair
and,
enough.
but I would say, and we've gotten into this conversation before about, and even tying it into things that are like political, but I mean, call me naive or whatever, but I really think most people are good people. Like, I would,
Agreed.
I'll go to my grave holding, like, I'd rather have that view. Like, I think I would have that view. I mean, I honestly hold that view, but I think even if there was evidence where it was like 50-50 or slightly the other way, I'd probably still hold on to that view just because that's kind of the worldview I want to hold.
I
That
totally-
most people are good people.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
I can
Well, that's like even if you look at any like subgroup of people, let's say, right? I agree. It's like they're all microcosms. Like most people are good, and that
Mhm.
also goes for gun owners in this country. I mean, the vast majority of them have it for home defense or for recreational use. But the hunt, and don't get me started on hunting. It's not my thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
it's not my thing, but it's a very big country, and New Jersey is not all of it. The tri-state area is nothing like, I don't know, Arkansas,
Yeah.
Michigan even. You know what
It's
I
a
mean?
lot
Yeah, well,
different.
you got it. So, like, I did a bus trip through Europe a few years ago. I lived in England for a time, and on our bus trip, there were Canadians, Americans, Africans, Kiwis, and us. And everyone on the bus trip who wasn't from the States would go, I'm from Newcastle, Australia, but they were introducing themselves from their state alone. Not I'm from, Mississippi, US. It's just like I'm from whatever. So
Right.
like, as well as people out there, like I'm not. This is just one example. I'm not saying anyone's better than anyone else, but just read the room as well. Like you can see what people are doing and match their aesthetic, and just just be kind with your words and to be decent. I think, and that's kindness. Kill them with kindness, I say.
Right.
Murder him with kindness.
Sure.
I heard Jack as I was walking by, and another thing about like the gun ownership and things like that is here there is it comes from a defense. I mean, for the random public person, us, the proletariat, we want guns not to attack our neighbors, but to defend ourselves from other people. And so there's a different, the dogma behind it is different. I don't know that I'm comfortable with a country of 330 million not being able to protect themselves, because there's a lot of crazy shit out there. But I get where from the Australian point of view that it is different. There's a lot of remote places, and I completely get behind that. It's a different place. It's got different needs.
Yeah, that's
so
right.
I mean, it's just different. England doesn't have firearms, and I was thinking about it earlier when you were talking about Port Arthur, and I just wanted to say it's in just reading about it, it's strikingly familiar to the situation that happened. I want to say was it in Norway, where that guy was like basically a Nazi, and he went on the island and just shot a bunch of people up.
Mostly children.
Yeah, I don't
mostly
know,
kids.
but like you could look at, one of the school massacres that's happened in the US in the last 5 years. Like, what's their motive? Why did that happen? Like shooting up a school or whatever. Like, it's very sad, and to not have that conscious brain to go, oh fuck, I'm going to go somewhere today and take countless lives. Like whether you have access to a firearm or not, like people like that should be psychologically fucking looked at before they're given the ability to
motivation.
Yeah, I think we all agree on that. There should be a little look at that.
Well, and we talked about this, Mitch, on an earlier episode, where at least here in the United States, but I think it's with any country, it's like we have a responsibility to look after each other. We have a responsibility. I work at a company. It's like 180 people. Like I see maybe 20 of them a day or whatever. Like I know a little bit about them. Like I know enough about them to know, like, if they start going sideways a little bit, right? We're not best friends or anything. I know people at my daughter's school. I know things about my neighbors. Like if something started going a little sideways, I need to be able to step in and like say something or alert somebody or whatever. And unfortunately, I think that's not encouraged. That's not, at least in our country. It's like you got to like look away. You shouldn't get yourself involved or whatever. But anytime I see these situations, like Mitch said, over the last few years in our country and whatever, there's always that person that's like, Johnny was always, I thought there was something weird about him. You know what I mean? Like there seems to always be that person. And like, we really need to feel more empowered to step up. And I'm not talking about like going and turning people into the police or whatever, but I mean, stepping in and being a human being, right?
Well,
and we don't do that. I think that's discouraged, at least in our society.
So as a society, it's like the Swiss cheese model. There's a hole here, hole here, hole here. And you go somewhere along the way that for that person, someone's failed them. whether it was a shit parenting or shit upbringing or whatever it might have been.
Yeah.
But like, in Australia, there's a mental health awareness campaigns are on the rise because, as we know, the understanding of medicine and mental health is on the increase. And there's a day every year called National Are You OK Day. And what that is this one of Australia's big mental or government-funded mental health companies, I guess you call them, is Beyond Blue, Lifeline. And they encourage people to speak up and help their fellow man and woman with their mental health. So National Are You OK Day is designed to check in with your mates, check in with your family. Hey, are you okay? Is everything all right? And, if someone goes, oh no, then it's knowing how to take that step further and how to be compassionate or empathetic to your fellow man or woman. So best
you're already kind
is,
of doing it with this National OK Day. It's like in America, man, we've gotten away from that. People are getting offended for other people when they weren't offended. Like we look for the problem and not the solution. We're here. It's constantly about. It's back to what I was saying earlier about our show. It's about that tribalism. It's like, I mean, I don't know what's it like over there with woke and Me Too and like BLM, those kind of things. Do you guys have those like
never heard of any of them.
Hot button issues?
Never heard of either of those three.
Wow. I'm moving to fucking Australia.
Yeah, let me get my thing here. Hold on. I'm gonna
wow.
Good
on you.
Yeah, so I guess in Australia, cancel culture isn't a problem. You guys don't have that?
Well, if a show is cancelled.
No, I don't mean that. I mean, like here, they'll dig up something that you said on an episode of your podcast that could be from 10 years ago.
20 years ago.
People get slammed all the time. Like that's why people use it to generate clickbait and get those algorithms going.
Right.
I mean, if someone said to me, oh yeah, 10 years ago, you called someone a fuckwit, I just turn around and say they probably deserved it. Like people in Australia, like I don't know about other Australians, but I personally pride myself on telling it how it is. I mean, a lot of my American friends are like, holy fuck, Mitch, you can't say that. I'm like, why? You called him a cunt. I'm like, because he was. Like,
I have the receipts, man. Like, I got the proof.
But like, it's we're in an age where, as you said, a lot of people aren't courageous enough to speak up about things that are wrong. Look at letting shit go by at work. Like for me, I work in high risk industry, and so does Zach and our other housemate Jed. We work in an industry, various industries. Jed's a tradesman and Zach's in underground mining. I'm an open cut. You literally have to rely on your fellow workers to keep you alive. Because if you don't, then all sorts of bad shit can go wrong. I'm relying on all the fitters and electricians to make sure that our gear is safe to operate. I'm relying on our engineers to make sure that the ground I'm driving on is stable because we're rebuilding a dam that failed. So it's this professionalism that people are paid to do, and to encourage, oh shit, there's a failure in that part of the dam, so we ceased work for 24 hours till it was investigated. It's shit like that needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
And I think in many aspects, where I work is doing that well. Obviously, a lot of smaller corporations would be more concerned about production than safety. And I get that. We all have an agenda to meet. So you can absolutely understand why people would skip steps or, forget to do a pre-inspection on a Bobcat or whatever just to get the job done.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's about management. It's about the higher up, the execs from the CEO all the way down to the apprentice or the cleaner.
So
the janitor,
I'm sorry. I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to say that a lot of what we hear here is about Australia and how rough it's been, or how things have changed so drastically since Port Arthur. Because it's clear that Port Arthur was a milestone in Australian history.
Yeah, it was. It was a milestone. See, I can't talk to it about as much as other gun owners. Like my family, there's people in my family. I have a few rifles in my name, but the actual registered owner is my stepdad. And, you know, so those, I was only 5 or 6 when it happened. So those of your generation, before mine, would have been affected.
Oh, wow.
more
He just
so.
called us old.
Yeah.
So you're like you're in your early 30s.
I'm
You're in
32,
your early
yeah.
32. Okay.
So I'm you know, up until people turning 42 this year, that's how old millennials are. From 25 and less, they're Generation Z. So I'm technically a millennial, and I fucking hate it.
It's all right, man.
But yeah, like
Don't
so my
act like
parents'
that.
generation say, like my stepdad, I was talking to my stepdad about it a while ago, and I said, "Oh, have you seen it change?" He just said, "Mate, like it's nice to see that it's people to get like access to automatic weapons, or you know, like specified weapons that you shouldn't, you know, you shouldn't be able to get." He just said it's nice to see that happen, and you know, people that own weapons now have the right temperament and the right mindset, and you know, so it's seemingly worked in Australian culture, and you know, statistically, it's worked as well. So that's one of the best things our Prime Minister Howard did right, was, you know, get those laws changed. So yeah, if that's anything you listeners take out of today, it's that it was really like a really good step forward for Australian culture.
Yeah, and I know that just from what I read, when they instituted the buyback policy, they ended up paying out like almost $1 billion in guns, right? Or was it almost 1 million? I forget. Mike, any idea?
It was millions and millions. Probably was closer to $1 billion.
Yeah, it was like 800 something million dollars, which is crazy.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's and Mitch, I'm not arguing your perspective whatsoever, and I'm just talking generically. But it's very hard. It's hard to have perspective on things that occurred before you were born, or when you were a kid.
Yeah, as it is, it's hard. So I can only go based on the evidence I've seen and the stories I've been told. So yeah.
I mean, you can only take what you can take. Like I mean, again, this is something we've talked about before, but there's one thing that's been a big thing with me is with younger generations who aren't aware of what they're missing. And I'm like a big film guy. I used to be a film projectionist back when projection was actually projection, before it was like DVDs, like when you would like have film and stuff like that. And there were like, you know, advantages to that. There were things that were more that were better. But if you didn't experience it, then you never you don't know what you're missing, and you don't know that you don't know. And
you're right.
So
you're right.
And
that's, sorry, you go.
No, I'm just saying and for me, I mean, that happened. I mean, I'm 50. I was born in 1972, and there's things that, you know, I was too young during Vietnam to really understand what was going on there. So I don't really have a perspective on that. I just kind of have, you know, what I've seen and read. But I'm saying each of us as a human being, we just we come into the story where we come into the story. And there's things that are lost. There's knowledge, there's perspective, there's points of view that you can never know, that are gone. They're like in the wind, right? And so you just have to base it on what you know now. And it's unnerving, because you never know. You don't know. You just do your best. You just do your best.
Well, it's like, so I grew up in a little community in Western Newcastle called West Walls End, 4,000 people. Everyone knows they're on. There's a little community pub called Holmesville Hotel. And there was a guy there that said, "Oh, you don't know how easy your generation has it." I'm like, "Well, let's sit down and discuss that." He was surprised. I said, "Well, the hardships of your generation are different to mine. Like these days, it's higher interest rates. We've been through a pandemic, wars, you know, social media. He went through the end of the Depression. He was a baby boomer. He was all these things." I said, "Well, hang on. You can't. It's like comparing apples and oranges."
Yeah.
Apples and oranges, rather. It's like, well, hang on. If I was alive back then, I would have been subjected to the same shit you were. So how could you possibly compare? Like, just because you're an ignorant old cunt who thinks that the world hates him. No, just you know, see it from the perspective of, hang on. And he called me a know-it-all. I said, no, I'm not a know-it-all.
What?
I'm
a
talking to you.
know-it-all.
I'm like, well, I know what's right from my perspective. And if you aren't going to hear, you're not going to actively listen and just assume that your generation had it harder, then one, you're either a fucking loser and didn't give life a real go, or two, the world's against you. So, you know what?
How about why didn't you fix shit, you smart ass?
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to do it fucking now, aren't I?
Right.
Hey, why'd you leave this shit sandwich for us to eat?
Yeah. Well, as I said, there's only so many ways you can polish a turd, right?
Right, exactly.
And,
I'll say this real quick, and something else to Mitch's point. Years ago, I had a woman I was dating. She was a school teacher. She was a lot younger than me, and she had a friend who was higher up in this high school, and they were doing this like career day thing, and they wanted people to come in and like talk to these kids that were seniors and like talk to them about like careers and things like that. And at the time, I think I was in my late 30s, early 40s, and I had zero opinion about high school kids. Like they were just jerks, right? Like I didn't know anything. I didn't know a high school kid. Like I had no
Talking about
context.
you, Mitch.
Yeah, I was just like, whatever. Like I had no.
I'm still in high school. What are you talking about?
And so I went. I volunteered for this thing, and I went there, and I spent the whole day. I took a day off work, and I went, and it was actually, I remember now. I was supposed to interview them, like for a fictional job, to like kind of like help them learn skill, like interview skills and things like that. And I was floored. I was so impressed at the quality of these kids and kind of how smart they were, how much they had their act together, like how sophisticated they were intellectually, and I always remember that because I was like, man, we get better as each generation is better than the previous generation. It really is. And as a person, it's I think we forget that, or we ignore it, or we don't want to acknowledge it. But every single one of these kids that I quote unquote interviewed, and they were exceptional. I walked out of that experience. I was like, everyone should do this. Like everyone should like spend a day talking to high school seniors or juniors and just have because they're amazing. We get taller, we get stronger, we get smarter. And isn't that what we want with each generation?
Well,
I think it's true. I mean, maybe not to the individual, but in the total, I think we do get better. Isn't that evolution, right?
It is.
Isn't that what we want? I think it's true.
One of the things we can pass down is just use that the method of the iceberg. Treat people with kindness, and you get good things out of students like that, I think.
Yeah, you chip away to that ugly shit under the water.
Yeah, that's right.
And I'm not saying they're all great, but I'm saying in general, I always think back to that.
I was a good kid.
I just think back to that, and it was eye-opening for me because I had such a low opinion of the next gen. I mean, personally, I had such a low opinion of the next generation, and it was shocking to me to go through that.
See, I think that opinion, like that attitude of having an opinion of something you know nothing about, not you specifically, but individuals, makes you look like a dunce. Like
I know
you look like a dickhead. Your credibility goes all out the door if you go in there thinking all these kids are stupid. Like
I know.
I think it's that's.
But I didn't even think of it. It wasn't like something in the front of my mind. It was just a bias that I had. Like, and I didn't even know I had it. I was just surprised how amazing these kids were. I mean, and I'm not talking about just good. They were exceptional. And this wasn't some gifted and talented school. This was just like average Joe public school in Parkville, Maryland. This wasn't, some magnet school or anything.
Falls under the I'm a big fan of the public school kind of concept. It's kind of like when you get a dog, right? If you get a dog that's full bred, that's your private schools and for the most part, I'm painting with broad strokes here.
This is going in a bad direction, man.
No. This is This is positive.
Okay.
But like that public school kind of mishmash of things, like people on our level, we tend to, I've said this before, this is how I feel about parenting. My feelings about parenting is all I got to do is make my sons just a little better than I was, which is a very low bar.
I was going to say, it's very low bar. You should be able to do that very easily.
Being is, if I can make them just do a couple things better than me, and mostly in that, like how you treat others and how in work ethic and just positive kind of things that you can let, if they can just get it earlier than me, like I mean, I got my degrees and I'm 50, but I got most of them in like the last 6 years.
Yeah.
If they can do it at 20, I did a fucking great job. You know what I mean?
It's up to you to break the cycles of the shit that you're exposed to and protect your kids from that.
Exactly.
You know, it's like, so if, you know, say for example, if you're a listener out there and your parents are abusive and you have children, you know how fucked up it can make you. So don't do that. Don't monkey see, monkey do. Like, break the cycle, because the kid didn't ask to be born. And if you raise a kid and you just beat your shit out of the kid every day, then what the fuck are you doing? Like, that's on you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the kid didn't ask to be there.
Yeah.
And subjected to that shit. So break the cycles, be good. And as I said, at the end of the day, like, just be a good human. That's what life comes down to. And if I ever have kids, then I'd like to continue that on. I've got plenty of nephews and nieces, and I'm seeing like they're all kind-natured and fun-loving, and you know,
you don't have kids, man. You got charm. Don't worry about that.
And a head like a block, but we do what we can.
And you know, an escort.
You know, one thing, and again,
50 odd, but yeah, we'll see how we go.
We sometimes we can get kind of negative on stuff, but one thing I meant to mention this in a previous podcast, but like 2 weeks ago, I took my daughter to a roller skating rink with her friend, and I hadn't been to a roller skating rink in 30 years, right? And now this is like, do they have roller skating rinks in Australia, Mitch?
They're making a comeback. Yeah, they sort of phased out in the 80s and 90s, from what I understand. But
same here.
There's not a lot left.
It's like finding a movie theater that shows film. But so I went to this roller skating rink, and we went there for 3 or 4 hours, and it was people from all across the spectrum of humanity. I mean, from age, race, skating skill level. I mean, there were people there that were falling down every 3 seconds. There were people there that were like fish through water that like couldn't fall. It was like watching people in the Matrix, right?
Were they still playing Pac-Man Fever and the Stroke?
They were playing modern, like kind of like cool, groovy dance music.
Fever. It's a new one.
But my point is, I went in there and it was like, if you go to a roller skating rink, man, and spend like 2 hours there, it was so positive. The outside did not come in. Everyone was just grooving. Everyone was friendly. Everybody was just having a good time. It was like, I didn't want to leave. When it was over, I was pissed. Like, I just wanted to stay in that groove. It was so positive and so awesome.
It's that stuff your daughter will remember too. It's time spent with them.
Yeah.
That's the important part.
I'm just saying, there's still people that are into everyone was getting along.
In business.
What?
I said, and it keeps the disco ball industry in business.
There was a disco ball. I'm just saying, it's still out there. There's still like a lot of really positive stuff, you know. Anyway, I can be very cynical. So to me, it was a big.
This episode should be called Geometry, because there's just tangents everywhere. This is fantastic.
Oh, dude.
That's what we specialize in, dude. Tangents.
We're working on getting a stream board so we can have tangent alerts come up while we're doing it, because we do that.
Anyway, go to a roller skating rink. That's my prescription for the week.
On that note, I'd say we accomplished what we wanted to find out about Mitch and what's going on in Australia. Yeah, man. And
I'm more of a blader than a skater. I just glide across the floor like a fat lava lamp, just wobbling shit everywhere. It's a sight, I'll tell you.
So we got another show to do with a very intelligent guy that we met. So Jack has words that he usually says at the end of an episode.
Oh, absolutely, guys. I mean, I know I was late, but it feels like we've been on for a long time. I think it might be time we wrap this up.
All right. Take care, guys. See you next week.
Adios.
Bye.